efficient delivery of public services, and the protection of commuters and consumers. In her first term as a senator, she immediately set to work creating meaningful legislation, more than 50 of which are now fully enacted laws. Among these are the laws providing for free lunch program for public school children, something very important to address the stunting growth and to address lack of quality education within the public school. For maternal and child care for the first 1,000 days of life, a child, or for free text alerts in times of disaster, for extended validity of driver's license and passport, and even making our streets, public spaces, workplaces safer by prohibiting all forms of sexual harassment, just to name a few. She's currently on her second term as a senator and has been proud to have voted for her twice in her two terms, maybe even voted for something else. 2016 maybe, and continues to serve our country, especially our most marginalized and disenfranchised sectors. For her track record in governance, she was chosen as a Lee Kuan Yew Exchange Fellow of the National University of Singapore, prestigious recognition of excellence in public service. So I welcome everybody. I would like us to welcome Senator Grace Poe.
Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Professor Manhit, Dindo Manhit. You know, just a side story, I didn't really know Professor Manhit until later on in my political career, although I've heard of him because he's always been an advocate for good governance. In fact, the stand that he makes and his principles are really unquestionable. I'm not being biased just because he was an advisor to my father, but I mean, he offers his advice to those he believes has really the sincere intention of serving the country. I have yet to earn that for him to be my full advisor. But anyway, as I said, good afternoon to everyone, to our special guests. Actually, the host, Professor Dindo Manhit, Rupert Paul Manhit, Mr. Nono Ibazeta, Miss Leonor Cleofas. I always see you in so many forums in just 1 week. Mr. Melvin John Tan, Attorney Terry Ridon. Are you here, Attorney Terry? Attorney Michael Toledo is probably not here. Mr. Brett Lim. So, as payroll and pension balloon and debt service mounts, it leaves a constricted space in the budget for infrastructure. As a result, annual government infrastructure spending could only afford asset maintenance and asset replacement. And whatever new assets created hardly make a dent on the huge backlog. We have 159,000 school classrooms backlog, 1 million hectares of untapped irrigable lands, 144,199 kilometers of subnational roads still unpaved, 1.9 trillion pesos railway dream looking for funders, to name just a few. Compounding this is the poorly curated menu of public works with, for example, flood control, drowning the appropriations for new roads, new hospitals, new school built. We have so much in flood control, and yet we have so much flood still. If government's daily expenditures next year amounts to 15.8 billion pesos per day, of which only 11.7 billion is supportable revenues, it will leave us 4 billion, which must be plugged by borrowings. So 4 billion pesos a day in borrowings. Then bulk of infrastructure can only be bankrolled by off-budget resources. A taut and tight budget leaves no large swaths to be cut or realigned for capital outlays unless government risks popular discontent by touching entitlements from free college to ayudas. So if we realign, put more infrastructure, which we badly need, another project will suffer. Healthcare, education, it can't do that. But funding if infra should not be done via taxes or debts alone, as there's a third way, the PPP. When I last spoke in this forum 3 years ago, I have no recollection, did I? I guess. Online, pandemic, everything was just a blur. That's right. And my signal was bad. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So we were trying to find a place for PPPs in the middle of the pandemic. Today, we find ourselves on a more solid footing to utilize PPPs in revitalizing the country's infrastructure growth. Through PPPs, this government can do more with less. PPPs offer stable funding for capital intensive infrastructure projects with the promise of efficient and innovative services. Maybe I can put this in an actual example context. For example, you have an idle piece of land beside your house, but you don't have fiscal space to put, let's say, a vegetable garden with a little hut so you can relax. But your neighbor can do that. Your neighbor can say, maybe we can share it. I can, buy the plants, put up the whatever shed. We can share it together, and then eventually it will be yours. You didn't have to have any out of pocket expenditure. Your budget wasn't touched. This is just a very simplistic example, but PPPs can provide a parallel, if not better, advantages that official development assistance or ODA can provide by requiring value for money proposals. The better quality and longer life cycles of PPP projects make it more cost effective than those solely financed by the national budget or the ODA. As we discuss the future of PPPs in our economic landscape, I want to highlight two vital building blocks for its successful implementation. On one hand are the components of PPPs that we must consider and balance. On the other hand is an efficient regulatory framework. First, PPPs require balancing of interests. We need to transform PPPs from a vehicle of mutual interest to a solid pillar in nation building. The main factor should always be public welfare. Filipinos shouldn't have to choose between affordable and efficient service. It should go hand in hand. Infrastructure growth should generate better paying and higher quality jobs for Filipinos, not displace our workers. The local industry must be given the opportunity to develop its capacity and contribute to national development as private proponents, joint venture partners, suppliers, or subcontractors. We must focus on PPPs that offer smart solutions through innovative, technology driven projects. Sustainable and climate responsive design should be the norm in our infrastructure. So, we have many examples of PPPs, but one that I'm really proud of is the Mactan Cebu International Airport. At that time, in 2014, they won the bid. But there were some in the Senate that was questioning the partnership of Megawide with GMR. So we had the hearing, and I was one of the participants in the hearing. I attended the hearing as a senator, and I spoke to the ones that my colleague was also a senator and said, but this company won fair and square the bidding process. We cannot just ignore, or we cannot just invalidate a legitimate contract because it doesn't send a good signal to potential investors. And so my only request to the winning proponent was, can you please make sure and use local designers, local talents when you build your airport in Cebu? And true enough, they presented their plans. And if you go to Cebu now, you can really see that they've used very local products that highlight the culture and the talents of our artisans. So aside from that, we also have the Clark International Airport. We have the NLEX, the SLEX, the Manila Skyway. In water, we have NCR East, Bulacan Bulk Water Supply Project, Iloilo Bulk Water. Not all PPPs, of course, are the same. There are others that are successful. There are others that are in need of probably better management. So it is really imperative upon the government to vet them properly. It's in the vetting process and a fair bidding process. Do not find loopholes after you've already granted the award. That's not how you invite potential investors to gain confidence in the market. So, anyway, we have actually in the Senate, we just approved the amendments to the PPP law. We just passed it. One of my amendments was to increase the amount before they need NEDA bidding. I think I increased it to 15 billion. And without it being official, I'm just telling you now, I think it was accepted, okay? Because things might change when we have the bicameral conference. So the important building block also are the components must form part of a regulatory framework that would inspire investor confidence and maintain public demand. Far too long, fragmented and unpredictable PPP regulations have made investors uncertain. This Congress thus prioritized the crafting of a Public-Private Partnership Act that would create a stable and efficient regulatory environment where PPPs can thrive. And this is a priority measure of this administration. The unified legal framework will address the ambiguities and delays that have plagued PPP implementations in the past. To remove the bottlenecks, we advocated for a streamlined approval process while raising the project cost threshold given current market prices and inflation. Project planning and monitoring will be strengthened. LGUs will be capacitated to undertake PPP projects, especially as they take on the delivery of basic services and facilities under the Mandanas ruling. If you don't know, I'm sure Professor Manhit can teach you what the Mandanas ruling is. Procedures for solicited and unsolicited proposals will be improved in choosing the most advantageous proposal. I urge that we consider both the track record and the capability of each proponent in the proposal, terms, and quality, and not just who is the lowest bidder. Private partners are entitled to a reasonable return of its investment through tolls, fees, and other charges. In return, I believe it is only right that we can demand the promised service quality and fair pricing for our users. Like, let's say, after a NEDA study and after approval, they decide to raise the cost for airport fees. better make sure that the airport facilities are good, that we don't wait in line for 2 hours just to check in immigration. I'm sure the public wouldn't mind shelling out a few pesos for better service. But of course, this will also have to be vetted with the reality on the ground and what the public can truly afford. I have also recommended measures to ensure accountability of public officers and private proponents through the appropriate sanctions and liability for actions contrary to the interests of the public and the principles of fair play. So if everyone is like favoring one over the other with no justified reason, that could be something that we can use to investigate the fairness of the vetting government official. The PPP Act will find support in our recent reforms on investment, our successful campaign on the amendment of the Public Service Act, which I sponsored and authored, opened up competition in key public service industries such as airports, expressways, railways, shipping, and telecommunications. For the information of some of our foreign guests, before the passage of the Public Service Act in 2020, I believe, telecommunications and many other industries in the Philippines cannot be owned. There is a foreign equity cap on ownership. But now, unless you are an electricity distributing and transmission provider, unless you deal with the transmission of petroleum and petroleum products, unless you deal with water distribution and sewage services, seaports, and public utility vehicles, you are now free to invest more than the majority in Filipino companies. And the first one that applied and got their license is Elon Musk's SpaceX. That's why we have that satellite provider now. We also passed the amendment to the Foreign Investment Act, which allows foreigners to fully do business or invest in domestic enterprises. The amended implementing rules and regulations of the Renewable Energy Act now allows full foreign equity in the exploration, development, and utilization of solar, wind, hydropower, geothermal, and tidal energy. We should also continue studies on the viability of PPP collaboration with economic zones. There are many areas in the country with untapped potential to become centers for trade, agro-industry, and information technology. The National Economic Development Authority has identified its top infrastructure projects, 48 out of 197 flagship projects, equivalent to 2.4 trillion pesos out of the 8.71 trillion will be financed through PPPs. As majority of the projects in the pipeline focus on physical connectivity, we will get the much needed boost to build and modernize our transportation system. There's hope that we can finally transform NAIA, as mentioned by Professor Dindo, into a world-class airport through the upcoming modernization project. As a side story, there was already a bid to modernize NAIA as early as 2017. And it was a mega consortium of all of the publicly listed companies, top publicly listed companies in the Philippines. You had Aboitiz, Ayala, MVP, Gokongwei Group. Anyway, that was in 2017. They sat on it, they didn't do anything about it. Until 2019, they still wanted to do it. Then the pandemic happened. Can you imagine if during the pandemic, they were able to rehabilitate NAIA without air traffic? It would have been done by now. But they sat on it. And by the time the pandemic happened, the consortium was like, oh, thank God we didn't get it. And you can't blame them because no one knew. It was so uncertain at the time if the world economy will still be able to bounce back. And bounce back we did. So, there's hope that we can finally transform NAIA. We also have high expectations for the development of our regional airports following the success of the Mactan Airport. The upcoming railway projects in Luzon and Mindanao would provide seamless travel for commuters, tourists, and trade. While we can build on what's been tried and tested, I challenge our private partners here today to also carve out new projects areas reflective of our current needs. With the current water crisis, I hope we can count on the private sector to help us ramp up water security initiatives. As of now, only the Wawa bulk water supply project is funded through PPPs in the NEDA list. The water sector has a lot of space for more PPPs. The government will ensure that these remain viable investments while still upholding consumer rights and quality of services. In the health sector, only the cancer center and vaccine manufacturing facility are being studied as PPPs. We need to do better, especially after the pandemic exposed the glaring deficiencies and limitations of our healthcare system. We also need private sector expertise and investments so that we will not get left behind in this digital age. The Department of Information and Communication Technology is now exploring PPPs for digital infrastructures, particularly on Wi-Fi access and expanded fiber networks. I end my speech today with calls for collaboration to my colleagues in government. I ask that we work together to strengthen our institutions and provide a robust and transparent environment for infrastructure and investment. I implore our scholars and policy experts here to help government with technical skills to manage PPPs. We need your continued research on the best practices and areas for improvement. And to the members of the business sector, the diplomatic community, and foreign chambers of commerce, let us be partners in identifying and building financially viable projects that can deliver much needed services to the Filipino people and also a return on investment from your side, for your side. While there are vast opportunities to explore, I must caution that PPPs is not the answer to all our infrastructure needs. There will always be projects better suited for other means. But with the proper planning and the right projects, we can maximize the true potential of PPPs. And I would like to thank the Manhit brothers, particularly Dindo, for having StratBase, for providing businesses with a much needed study on the landscape of Philippine politics and most especially of the Philippine economy and the digital economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Grace Poe, for that very insightful and inspiring message. Our next speaker will be sharing with us a study conducted by the Institute in partnership with the Center for International Private Enterprise entitled Tale of Two Dams, Transparency and Governance, a comparative analysis of the new Centennial Water Source Kaliwa Dam Project and Wawa Bulk Water Supply Project, or the Upper Wawa Dam. The study is part of a collaborative effort to promote transparency and accountability in infrastructure flagship projects, especially those funded through China's Belt and Road Initiative. Joining us live from the United Kingdom via Zoom, please welcome Dr. Rizal Buendia, Non-Resident Fellow of StratBase ADR Institute.
Spare rights. Okay. Wala din mo sige to.
Dr. Buendia, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Just for a sec, I
All
have
right,
to
sir. Take
share
your time.
screen.
We can see your screen already, sir.
Can you do this story? Then share my screen.
Dr. Raleigh, we can see your screen.
Oh,
You're
you can
good,
see
sir.
my screen.
Yes, you're
Just
good
for
to
a
go.
sec.
Okay.
I Hello. Can
Yes,
you
sir.
hear me
We can
now?
hear you very clearly.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm sorry for the delay. I have some technical difficulties here. Now, first of all, I wish to greet everyone a good afternoon there. It's good morning here. Second, I'm extending my gratitude to Professor Dindo Manhit, my co-author in this study, for the opportunity to present this research before a distinguished audience. And thirdly, to the Center for International Private Enterprise for its sponsorship and patronage. I do hope that the findings in this study will serve as lessons on the future direction of infrastructure programs of the country, or as the theme of this forum aptly instructs, revitalize the Philippines' infrastructure development. This is a comparative study of two flagship infrastructure projects of the country. The new Centennial Water Source Kaliwa Dam Project and Wawa Bulk Water Supply Project, or Upper Wawa Dam, otherwise known as the Kaliwa Dam Project and Upper Wawa Dam Project, respectively. They will be assessed in terms of the extent and depth of their transparency and governance. Now, given the limited time, I'm only allotted 15 minutes for this presentation. I'll be focusing on transparency and governance in as much as the regulatory framework, which is also a part of this study, may not be able to be, I may not be able to share it, but you can view it from the written report. In assessing these projects, their similarities and differences were determined. Modes of funding were analyzed, specifically the project cost, terms and conditions, and the economic, political, and social risks and benefits. The research also looks at the implications of the official development assistance and public-private partnership to transparency and good governance. Towards the end of the paper, general recommendations were made for policy makers' consideration and concludes that transparency does not only avert corruption but prevents the elite from capturing the state in the long run. This is a 4-month study from March to July 2023. So the developments after this date were not recorded in this study. But nonetheless, I believe that the analysis and the conclusions made in this study remains significant. Now, let me start with, like in any comparative study, there are similarities and differences. And let me start with the similarities. First, as I mentioned earlier, they are flagship infrastructure programs of the Philippine government intended to ensure the country's water security by increasing raw water supply. Second, it is intended to meet the future potable water demand of Metro Manila and nearby provinces of Cavite, Rizal, and Quezon. Third, to address the shortage and depletion of water supply at Angat Ipo Labesa water system. And finally, to mitigate the recurring flooding issue in the lower communities, specifically in the province of Rizal and cities of Marikina and Pasig. Another is on the second similarity. These two projects are situated in Rizal province, among others, and transgress into the ancestral domain of the indigenous peoples of Dumagat Remontados. Any dislocation, relocation, and destruction of ancestral domains will require IP's free, prior, and informed consent, or FPIC, as provided by the 1997 Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act, or Republic Act 8361. On the differences, let me start with the Kaliwa Dam project. It is designed to construct a 62-meter high embankment over 113 hectares with an initial capacity of 600 million liters per day MLD. Once constructed, the Laiban Dam, a component of the Kaliwa Dam, is projected to produce 1,800 MLD. The dam system is expected to discharge 2,400 MLD with the corresponding 27.7-kilometer conveyance tunnel structured underground, where the concessionaires will connect the pipeline and water treatment plants. The project was originally expected to be completed in 2023, but the timeline has been revised, and the project is now targeted to be completed in June 2026 and operational in 2027, according to NWSS. In comparison, the Wawa Dam project is designed to create a concrete reservoir with a surface area of approximately 414.28 hectares and a water storage of 120.1 million cubic meters. Spearheaded by the Wawa JV Co. Incorporated, a joint venture of Prime Metroline Infrastructure Holdings Corporation, or Prime Infra, and the San Lorenzo Ruiz Builders and Developers Group. The project is engaged in two water supply infrastructures built in phases. Phase 1 involves the construction of a 25-meter high Tayabasan weir in Antipolo City, which was completed in July 2022. This is ahead of its October 2022 schedule. It was designed to deliver 80 million liters per day of water to the Calawis treatment plant built by the Manila Water Corporation, one of the concessionaires of NWSS, serving the eastern zone of Metro Manila. While Phase 2 entails the construction of an 84-meter high dam projected to deliver at least 518 MLD of water to over 500,000 households. Now, with regards to cost and financing, the Kaliwa Dam's total project cost, as you can see from the table, is currently at 12.25 billion after it was slashed from 18.72 billion by NEDA in 2019, as recommended by MWSS. Apart from the revised funding, NEDA likewise changed the mode of financing from PPP to ODA, or Official Development Assistance, loan from People's Republic of China. Under the ODA, KDP, or the Kaliwa Dam project, is funded from the loan provided by the Export-Import Bank of China, XECIB, based on the preferential buyer's credit loan agreement between MWSS and XECIB. Alternatively, the Upper Wawa Dam project has a total funding of 26 billion, with 80% of which comes from Banco de Oro loan, while the remaining 20% has been provided by Frank Infra. Unlike the KDP or the Kaliwa Dam project, whose mode of financing is through ODA loan, UWD arranged within the public-private partnership framework and utilizes the off-take agreement to obtain easy finance. Conceiving the agreement within the context of business-to-business transaction to the 30-year contract between Wawa JB Co. and Manila Water Company, one of the concessionaires of MWSS, guarantee not only a long-term partnership between two private enterprises, but also secures the repayment of debts from their creditors. Another comparison is on environmental and IP concerns. Unlike the Kaliwa Dam project, free, prior, and informed consent has been complied with by the Wawa JB Co. to the IPs of Dumagat and Remontados of Antipolo City. Regrettably, Kaliwa Dam project has yet to fully comply with the required FPIC. However, I believe that a conditional certificate has been provided to the Kaliwa Dam project. I will deal with this later. Now, the analysis. In examining the transparency of the projects, the following measurements are used. The Construction Sector Transparency Initiative Infrastructure Data Standards, processes of public consultation, accepted social and environmental standards, and disclosure of contracts and agreements. Now, let me say a few words about the cost IDS. This cost IDS serves as the framework that determines the openness or restrictiveness of government or project owners in disclosing information and facts on data points or items of concern across 6 stages of the infrastructure project cycle, namely project identification, preparation, completion, contract, procurement, and implementation. Now, comparing the project's data, Upper Wawa project is more transparent and accountable. It scored 178 in 39 cost items and an average score of almost 5, while the Kaliwa Dam project is gauged at 104 and close to 3 as the mean. On public consultation, meaningful public consultation on the impact of any proposed project with affected communities and other stakeholders is an important component of transparency. Free, prior, and informed consent has been complied with by the Wawa JB Co. to the IPs of Antipolo in July 2020. In March 2022, a final agreement was forged between Wawa JB Co. and Dumagat Remontado IPs of Antipolo and Montalban for the development and construction of the second phase of the water bulk water supply project, the Yabasan multi-basin system. KDP has yet to fully comply with the free, prior, and informed consent, although conditional certificate has been issued in 2019. In February 2023, the IPs marched to Malacanang Palace to oppose the construction of the Kaliwa Dam. The indigenous community sought a dialogue with President Marcos Jr. and demand a halt to the construction of the project. A social compliance certificate has been issued to the Wawa JB Co. in July 2020 by the DNR EMB, or the Environmental Management Bureau. Inasmuch as the FPIC is tied with the ECC, the Kaliwa Dam project has yet to meet the criteria to receive the full ECP. On disclosure of contracts and agreements, the Wawa project is more transparent, garnering the highest score of 6 in its cost IDS contract phase, while Kaliwa Dam project reported 0. The former as well is assessed to have maintained a more comprehensive website that keeps the public updated on the development of the dam's construction, apart from the regular news releases it posts compared to the latter. Now let me go to the policy recommendation. Against the backdrop of issues identified and analysis of the two flagship projects of the country, the following policy recommendations are presented as general guidance for policymakers for consideration and information of other interested parties. Now, the first one is broaden transparency and accountability measures. Project authorities have to establish mechanisms that provide the public more comprehensive and deeper access to information and documents like project papers, business-to-business agreements, monitoring and evaluation systems, and anti-corruption measures. Deepen consultation with the indigenous communities. Let me see this for a second. Inasmuch as the construction of the dam could lead to displacement and loss of IPs and their ancestral lands, cradle to their culture, identity, values, and ways of life, dam projects has to apply with has to comply with legal requirement and of securing the prior informed consent from the IPs. It is not only for the purpose of fulfilling what the national law demands, but conforming with the basic human right guaranteed by the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of the Indigenous People. Sustain continuing engagement and fair resettlement program. A comprehensive settlement compensation plan consisting of fair compensation or access to traditional new and economic activities that could provide food and income generating activities has to be designed. These measures that will mitigate multi-generational negative effects of relocation experiences on IPs and widen the opportunities to obtain needed basic social services like education, healthcare, transportation, and information gathering. Strengthen anti-corruption measures in regulatory frameworks. Regulatory frameworks need to strengthen their provision in preventing and fighting corruption. These measures can be in the form of more effective rules on open access to information of public interest, the disclosure and management of conflicts of interest in the public sector, the disclosure and verification of assets of public officials in regulating the interaction between private and public sector among the key ones. Fortify the role of government in business-to-business transaction. The government may set the rules and guidelines that business must follow when engaging in B transactions. like the offtake, uh, like the offtake agreements in the area of contract enforcement, consumer protection, business support and promotion, intellectual property rights, competition, taxation, among others. And finally, uh, explore the potential partners for the KDP. It would be worth exploring other possible partners with proven track record being a reliable uh, development development partner of the Philippines. Now, to conclude, as the study shows, the Wawa Dam project, which operated under hybrid PPP offtake agreement framework, is more transparent in spite of some of its limitations. It was able to deliver its services far more ahead of the Kaliwa Dam project. At this stage of the study, it could be argued that a relatively transparent organization heightens its legitimacy and value for money as it fosters economical, efficient, and effective use of resources and provision of services and promotes equity in the allocation and use of resources in its operation. When an organization makes public how funds are used, it creates an incentive to ensure more efficient use of those resources and achieve greater cost effectiveness and efficiency. This improves its performance data and increases operational effectiveness. A policy paper published by the World Bank highlights that, and I quote, transparency is important not only because it increases the efficiency in the allocation of resources, but also because it may help in ensuring that the benefits of growth are redistributed and not captured by the elite. End of quote. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Buendia. I hope our audience was able to enjoy his presentation. It was very insightful indeed. So for this afternoon's discussions, we will have two panels featuring government officials and major players in Philippine infrastructure. Just to give you a bit of a background on how we will do it, each panel will last for an hour. All panelists will be seated here in front, and each of them will be given 10 minutes to deliver his or her opening statement. After which, a free-flowing discussion guided by the moderator will follow. The moderator may also entertain questions from the audience and via Zoom. To moderate the first panel discussion, please welcome Ms. Joyce Ilas, Communications and Advocacy Lead of Stratbase ADR Institute. Let's give her a hand, please. Let's also welcome our panelists for this afternoon. Administrator Leonor Cleofas of the Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System. Mr. Melvin John Tan, President of Wawa JV Co. And last but not the least, Attorney Terry Redon, Convener of InfraWatch PH.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Joyce Ilas. I am the Communications and Advocacy Lead of Stratbase ADR Institute, and I'll also be the moderator for today. All right, as Kat mentioned earlier, we will first give you 10 minutes each for your opening statements. So let's start with Ma'am Leonor Cleofas, Administrator of the Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for inviting MWSS. This is a very important event, especially we heard about Dr. Buendia comparing the Kaliwa Dam with the Wawa Dam. But MWSS has a successful private-public partnership. When the government has passed the Water Crisis Act in 1995, it's a brilliant idea of the then President Fidel B. Ramos to invite the private sector to help government deliver the needed service. For MWS, you know for a fact that we have the service area of Mega Manila, and that also includes the whole province of Rizal, uh, portion of Cavite, about five cities and municipality of Cavite, and now we cover the whole province of Bulacan for the supply of treated bulk water through a public-private partnership. When in 1997, we were helped by the IFC, the International Finance Corporation of the World Bank, to draft the concession agreement. And we feel that the coming up with a public-private partnership in delivering the services as required under our charter is a very successful one, considering that we are running 26 years of our partnership. But before privatization, we were only serving about 7 million. And right now we are serving 17 million in Mega Manila and about 3 million in the province of Bulacan. And we cannot do this on our own. Dr. Buendia narrated the constraint by a government entity in making sure that we have our infrastructure processes in the government. We know for a fact that infrastructure is the key to water security. But not only infrastructure, but also the cooperation of all stakeholders, the government, the society, as Professor Manhid had said a while ago, that we need the whole society approach for us to be able to be successful in delivering our services. I just like to congratulate our two concessionaires, Manila Water and Maynilad, for making sure that we have a transparent framework on privatization and making sure that we have the key performance indicator, the hard targets, where we can be able to gauge their performance. So Dr. Buendia talks about transparency, and this is very important for us because we are being governed by the rules of the Commission on Audit. And as you know, something very small, then we will have an audit observation memorandum from COA. So we are being governed by the Commission on Audit. But with the help of our two concessionaires, yes, there is a difference between ODA and public-private partnership, and that is being addressed with our private partners. That is being addressed by our regulatory office. Unlike ODA, wherein we have to come up with a really hard timetable. But considering Kaliwa Dam, I have to, please indulge me, I have to take exception on some of the findings of the study. And we welcome the study actually, and we want to benefit from the policy recommendations of the study. And I congratulate Dr. Buendia and Professor Manhit for coming up with this comparison. We believe that really, as far as MWSS is concerned, public-private partnership is a go, is a successful way of making sure that we deliver the service. But I have said in one of the forums where we were together, Senator Paul, I said that public-private partnership is very welcome to us in the government service, but also we want to make sure that we don't leave everything to the private sector. We have to find a common ground because we know that government is pro-service and public sector is pro-business enterprise. So we have to come up with a common ground so that we can marry the two interests of the government and the public sector and the private sector. I just want to, and I was trying to tell Professor Manhit that we were able to get the pre and prior informed consent of Kaliwa. One for Quezon in 2022, in February 2023 we get the pre and prior informed consent in Rizal. But it's really a hard work because we are building a mega structure. We are not implementing a very simple pipe laying projects. We are building infrastructure in the mountains where we have our indigenous people. MWSS has sustained communication, public consultation with the indigenous people. We have tried to get that clearances from the indigenous people with the help of the National Commission of Indigenous People of the Philippines for 8 years. For 8 years. But not only the FEIC, the culmination is certificate of precondition from the NCIP. And also, aside from the FEIC, we have to get the agreement on the use of protected areas from DENR, Department of Environment and Natural Resources. And again, thank you to the study of Professor Manhit and Dr. Buendia. The second phase of Kaliwa Dam will be implemented by a public-private partnership because we know for a fact that it takes a long time for us, the government agency. There is somewhat no elbow room, where in fact the private sector has some flexibility on how to accomplish the job. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much, Ms. Leonor Cleophas. Next, let's hear it from Mr. Melvin John Tan of the president of the Wawa JV.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again to StratBase for giving us a platform to share how public and private sectors can collaborate and develop and build socially relevant infrastructure to create better lives and resilient economies. Honorable Senator J.V. Arcito, sir, good afternoon. Our partner, MWSS Administrator, Ma'am Bobby Cleophas, Attorney Terry Don, co-panelist. Everyone, good afternoon. Please allow me to start by refreshing everyone of the significance of the Wawa Bulk Water Supply Project. So today, the Greater Metro Manila area, including the provinces of Rizal and Cavite, are largely dependent on one water supply dam, the Angat Dam. The Angat Dam was built in the 1960s. The Upper Wawa Dam that we are building will be the largest water supply dam in over 50 years. The Wawa Bulk Water Supply Project, which has a capacity of over 700 million liters per day, is the largest privately led water supply infrastructure in the history of the country. Once completed, the Wawa Bulk Water Supply will supply about 710 MLD and benefit more than 700,000 households, or about 3.5 million Filipinos. The water supply will boost Manila Water's water supply availability by about 30%. And we have an opportunity, ma'am, to augment additional over 190 MLD to be delivered to MWSS and its concessionaire. No less than the President Bongbong Marcos, in his last one a couple of months ago, recognized the importance of the Wawa Bulk Water Supply Project. The Wawa Bulk Water Supply Project is led by Prime Infra. Prime Infra is the infrastructure arm of Mr. Razon, focusing on sustainable projects in the areas of energy, waste management, and water supply. In 2019, Prime Infra, through Wawa JVCO, our subsidiary, signed an offtake agreement with MWSS and Manila Water to develop the project. It has two phases. The first phase, as mentioned by Dr. Buendia earlier, is what we call the Tayabusan Weir. It's actually a small dam. It's a 25-meter dam. It has been operational since October 2022 with a capacity of about 80 MLD. The second phase is what we call the Upper Wawa Dam. Today, the progress is about 60%, and we have every intentions of delivering this ahead of our commercial operations date target of December 2025. And we're well on track, ma'am. Every month, we submit a report to MWSS to let them know about the progress of the project. So the project delivery success of the project is anchored actually on three P's. If I may borrow PPP or public-private partnership, but in this case, what I mean is first our partner, second our processes, and third our people. So let me start with our partners. I'm sitting here beside me, our government sponsor, our principal, MWSS. The project would not have been approved if not for the support, and we're very grateful for the support of MWSS led by Ma'am Bobby. We are aligned with MWSS in accelerating water source development project to improve water security in the greater Metro Manila area. Just a side note, when we were starting this project, because we signed this 2019, 2020 lockdown and all, in the middle of the pandemic, Ma'am Bobby was very instrumental in helping us bring experts from outside the country to allow us to continue work in the middle of the pandemic. We are also grateful because as an infrastructure flagship project, the permitting process with DNR, LGUs, etc., are relatively streamlined as an infrastructure flagship project. And as Dr. Bendia pointed out earlier in his report, we are pleased to share that the indigenous peoples of Dumagat and Remontado have given their consent to the project through the very rigorous NCIP FPIC process. Second, our processes. As a privately led organization with very strong commitment to deliver this project ahead of plan, we have very agile internal systems. We're very quick to identify what works and stop and replace what doesn't. So our approval process is very simple and very streamlined, very efficient. So we are structured to deliver the project ahead of plan. And finally, and equally more important, our people. We've meticulously scoured the talent market to hire the best people with very strong track record and with grit to get things done. We hired the best EPC contractors and consultants to help us deliver the project ahead of plan, as was the case of phase 1, the Tayabasan Weir, which we actually completed 6 months ahead of the October 2022 commercial operations date target. So in closing, we at Prime Infra have every intentions of replicating these strategies across the projects that the government will allow us to participate. We have very strong commitment to our purpose of delivering socially relevant infrastructure to create better lives and resilient economies. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Melvin John Tan. Now, let's call on Attorney Terry Ridon, convener of InfraWatch Philippines.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have the corny speech because I have a paper speech, but I'll still read it because this is very important, particularly relating to collaborative strategies. No, I would like to thank President Dindo and the Strat-based family for the invitation. We are honored to speak before you because it is very important for us to be able to see the nexus between regulation and the work of the private sector, the community, and government. No? We will focus on particular cases in which government, the private sector, and the community and the public has been able to provide real solutions to actual problems. And one of our proudest moments in government has been a water services project in an urban poor community in Lupang Arenda in Taytay, Rizal. We had worked with Manila Water under the old leadership and MWSS to make sure that this project would be completed. Um, well, the problem in Lupang Orienda is it is composed of families, of 500 urban poor families that were beset by water rates of 50 pesos per cubic meter imposed by a local water cooperative that had no resources to undertake capital expansion, nor repairs and maintenance over leaky pipe systems. As a result, these families were paying premium pricing for water services that had low water pressure and periodic water supply interruption. As the then chair of the Presidential Commission for the Urban Poor, leaders of Lupa Arenda went to our office and sought our help to resolve the problem. And we never saw our mandate as just merely enforcers of urban poor evictions and demolitions. In fact, serving urban poor communities through these types of services was an imperative of the commission. So it was natural for us to basically make representations on how to make their lives better. And the first step to actually helping the community was to determine which water concessionaire had ultimate control over Lupang Arenda. And it was Manila Water, which was at the time still led by the Ayala Group. And as we had previous relations in our work in Congress, we had talked to the then president of Manila Water and asked what can in fact be done. And he said that Lupang Arenda was being operated by a local water cooperative that had been contracting its water from Manila Water. But he also said that Manila Water was interested in supplying water directly to Lupang Arenda families, and that Manila Water will negotiate with the local water cooperative to make sure that this will be done. The discussion happened in August of 2017. By November of 2017, we were breaking ground and attended by no less than Cabinet Secretary Leon C. Vasco Jr., then MWSS Chair Ray Velasco, and then Manila Water Chairman Fernando Zobel de Ayala. By the start of 2018, water rates in Lupa Orenda have been reduced from 50 pesos per cubic meter to 50 pesos per cubic meter, at no cost to government nor to the urban poor families. And the magnitude of the impact is this. It is a 70% reduction of water rates in a low-income community. This translates to household savings of 1,000 pesos a month, 12,000 pesos a year, which urban poor households can use for other basic necessities such as food, education, and healthcare. At scale, this translates to a total annual community value capture of 6 million pesos in a 500 household urban poor community. One can only imagine the renewed local economic exchange as a result of broader incomes. In fact, one of the Lupa Orenda leaders during the groundbreaking said that they never expected to see this in their lifetimes, but it has happened simply because government and its leaders cared enough to change things, and that the private sector and its leaders cared enough to get things done. And as we move forward with other water projects in the pipeline, such as Kaliwagan project and other water projects, infrastructure projects around the country, I think it is the hope that government and the private sector should be animated by the same spirit of providing real solutions to actual problems and engage with stakeholders with a genuine concern for their welfare. This means that affected communities in dam projects should be provided not just with new housing, but new actual communities, which should approximate the communities which they will lose when the dams take over. This also means respecting ancestral domain claims by affected indigenous peoples groups and subsequently undertaking resource sharing agreements while improving their communities. And we are happy that the concessionaire and MWSS has made a continuing commitment towards this end. This also means expediting the improvement of water services, particularly in areas with countless complaints of poor water quality and low water pressure. On the part of government, it should use its regulatory powers to review the service commitments of water utilities which continuously fail to deliver acceptable service standards. Hindi ho yung mga MWSS concessionaires po ito. Iba. With more particularity, it should review the service delivery of failing water districts, which have joint venture agreements with private sector partners. There should be no reason for water districts with JVs to fail over an extended period of time. Congress should also be tapped as a major stakeholder in water management, particularly under the leadership of House Speaker Martin Romualdez. Speaker Romualdez called on Congress to extend all efforts to reduce water system loss and set up mechanisms to assist water districts to ensure that more Filipinos have access to safe potable water. This comes after Luo Chair Ronnie Ong publicly sought support from Congress to reduce the almost 30% annual water system loss recorded by water districts across the country. Ong bared data from LUA that showed that 584 water districts, at least 244 water districts have rates of non-revenue water or water that is pumped and then lost or unaccounted for that exceeds 21%. And LUA bared that 20 water districts have NRW rates that go as high as 71%. On average, water districts record an NRW rate of 29.34%, which translates to around 488 million cubic meters, or about half the capacity of Angat Dam. And the reasons for this failure includes a lack of budget of most water districts to install new pipes, conduct regular maintenance and repairs, and the virtual water loss component due to meter inaccuracies, illegal connections, and billing errors. Studies have showed how NRW management can become a quick, yet responsive solution to water shortages. It's a win-win solution for consumers and the service providers, as addressing that water system loss can improve both the much-needed supply and a service provider's bottom line. As the world braces for the harsh effects of El Nino, one concrete way for legislators to help is funding capital outlay requirements to upgrade the infrastructure of water districts across the country and effectively stave off water loss. And again, at the core of all of these interventions, big or small, local or national, has always been the need to provide real solutions to actual problems and to engage with stakeholders with a genuine concern for their welfare. As we deliberate and act upon the challenges of water management, let us remember that behind every statistic, every cubic meter, there is a family, there is a community whose life can be changed for the better. Maraming salamat po.
All right. Thank you very much to our panelists for your very comprehensive opening statements. We've been talking about the public-private partnerships, and I'm sure many of our audience here, our participants in the venue, have questions. So if you do, just raise your hands later, and we'll try to acknowledge and accommodate as many questions as we can. So, but for now, for this panel at least, we will be focusing on efficient water management. So if you have questions about other infrastructures for other sectors, maybe we can address it in the next panel. All right, so I'll just start our question and answer round. You've provided great examples of how the government and the private sector can work together, especially in ensuring an efficient water management in the country. Perhaps my first question is, how can we ensure clean and safe water supply for the country for as long as possible? Because earlier this year, the president said that we were facing water crisis, and although we have good supply as of now, there really isn't any assurance in the long run. So how can we ensure clean and safe water supply for Filipinos in the long run?
For NWSS, we have our key performance indicators. That is hard targets for our 3 concessionaires. Actually, we have 3 concessionaires. The other concessionaire is Luzon Clean Water Development Corporation. And we serve 22 water districts in the whole province of Bulacan. We have to make sure that we comply with the standards for drinking water by WHO and DOH. Not only on the quality of water, but also on the type of service that our 3 concessionaires are delivering, making sure that we have enough pressure We have to make sure also that we have uh, intelligent use of water. Not only the public should be able to help in making sure that we do water saving. The president has said about saving rainwater, and we try to, we're like an agent of public-private partnership with the water districts of the Philippines. MWSS only covers about Metro Manila, Rizal, Cavite, and Bulacan, but the other part of the country is being handled by water districts. And water districts cannot invest so much in having a sustainable water source. And one good model is the Bulacan Bulk Water Supply Project. We did it by having a parameter of peso per cubic meter. And that was done in an international competitive bidding. And we were able to solicit the lowest peso per cubic meter, delivering at the interconnection points of the different water districts. And I think can be replicated by other water districts. We have Water Association of Water District of Negros, as far as Mindanao, Visayas, and parts of Luzon that are coming to our office, asking for technical assistance, making sure that they will be able to replicate what we have done in Bulacan Bulk Water Supply Project. There are three very important parts of water security, making sure that we have sustainable potable water to our constituent. Number one is infrastructure. Number two is having to have common ground with the private sector. We have our regulatory office, but we know for a fact that Congress and Senate is working on Department of Water so that there will be no duplication of agencies, especially on regulation. We have our own regulatory office, and we want to make sure that there is a what to call this unified policy on regulation. NWRB, National Water Resources Board, is trying to do regulation on the service provider, the private service provider. Local Water Utilities Administration is also having their regulatory for the water districts. So for us, MWSS, a regulatory office is having an exercise of every 5 years, making sure that the expenses incurred by our two concessionaires are prudently and efficiently incurred. Just like the water districts, we don't get any subsidy from the government. It's consumers pay. So it's very sensitive for us in order for us to have that impact to the water tariff that is acceptable to the consumer. Aside from that, we have a lifeline. Most of our residential houses, if they consume 10 cubic meter per month, they only pay a very low tariff per month, and we call it lifeline. Like in Meralco, they have the lifeline. Yeah.
Melvin, thank you for that. Ma'am Melvin, you talked about a very good project between the government and Gawa JVCO earlier. I'd like to ask, what are there any challenges that you face in implementing this project, and what are the ways that you think
Baka hindi tayo maabot ng
Yeah.
4 o'clock. Lumagpas tayo ng 4 o'clock.
Or perhaps how else can we improve, or what can we do to improve or address these challenges for better partnerships in the future?
For me, top of mind, and this is being experienced. This is not unique, say, for a private sector. This can also be experienced by the government sector. Even when you develop project, the starting gate is securing the permits, and sometimes the development process is longer than the actual construction work. Maybe I'll rephrase myself. More often than not, the development process is longer than the actual construction work. So if we can find a way to streamline and rationalize the permitting process, for instance, that would be very helpful. I'm sure it will encourage both government and private sector to do more and focus on solutions. So yun ang pinaka top of mind. But if you'll ask me to enumerate everything, maybe 4 o'clock is not enough.
Attorney Terry, would you like to add? All right. Okay. To our audience, do we have any question for now before I ask my next question? Okay. All right. So, okay. Go ahead, sir. I'll lend you my microphone.
Well, my expectation in attending this forum is that the topic is infrastructure development. I have here the list of 194 infra flagship projects presented by NEDA. There's only one here listed of the 194, which is about water, which is the Wawa Dam project. And as Ma'am Cleof has explained, MWSS is very Metro Manila centric. No? So we're talking again of Imperial Manila mindset. There's nothing at all about how bad the local water districts are performing, although attorney mentioned that. But exactly who is really enforcing the performance parameters on that outside of MWSS? Is it LUA or LUA? Does it really have the teeth to do that? Or should there be additional legislative moves to really create a Department of Water to handle that? Or even that is not enough, there should be an ERC type body that will really sort of put these water districts and service providers in line with the discipline of cost and the tariff in a very transparent way. Thank you. My name is Alex Escucha.
Sir Alex, thank you po sa question. But the Department of Water is being discussed in Congress and Senate, and we have our Honorable Senator J.B. Ercito. We are part of the technical working group, sir, the Local Water Utilities Administration and MWSS, and all other agencies that are involved in water. But to tell you, with the appointment of Chairman Ronnie Ong right now at the Local Water Utilities Administration, we were together yesterday at Puerto Princesa, and he has informed everybody that most of the participants are water districts. He's trying to go to the different water districts and try to really grasp what are the emerging issues, more important emerging issues of the water districts. And I think the one that he solicited is the development of sustainable water sources. And this is where we come in. We want to impart what we have done in Bulacan Bulk. We are serving 22 water districts, and one water district cannot alone invest so much on the development of water sources. Mostly of our water districts are relying on groundwater, and there should be some clustering as a sort of economies of scale. And as I've said, we have been talking with the different association of water districts in the different provinces so that we can impart that. I think Chairman Ronnie and the Administrator Attorney Vince Reveal is trying to imitate what we have for Bulacan Bulk. My former chairman of the Board of Trustees is looking at me, Mr. Aligpala. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. You also mentioned, ma'am, earlier that one of the challenges in implementing public-private partnerships is marrying the is varying the interests of the public, the government and the private sector, and also the civil society, the public. How can we ensure that in the projects being implemented and even in the future new water resource infrastructure projects that will be created, that they will be inclusive and that they will not be detrimental to the environment and the local community, especially with the challenges we're facing with the Kaliwa Dam?
Yes, actually, there are several laws that we have to comply when we do mega structure, okay? Like we have to secure the environmental compliance certificate. There are so many conditions about environmental compliance certificate. We have to get the approval of our indigenous people. Before we, just for Kaliwa alone, as I've said, we have spent 8 years to be able to get the approval of our indigenous people. But before that, we have to do immersion. We have to know their culture. We have to know what are their expectations. Before in 1980, when we were implementing Laiban, the idea of the government is to get rid of the people inside the mountain, and it's not really sustainable. It's not feasible. We have to live with the people who are living in the mountains, because we have to also to have a healthy ecosystem. For example, the Angat Ipo La Mesa watershed, we have hired or cooperated with our indigenous people, and we call them Bantay Gubat. They are the ones trying to guard our watershed, making sure that there is no illegal kaingin or managing the rehabilitation and management of the watershed. If you don't have a healthy ecosystem, then you don't have any good supply of raw water. And this is something that we implement together with the different stakeholders of the project. So again, cultural sensitivity is very important for us to be able to get their agreement and giving us the trust. In our Kaliwa Dam, we impart to them that it's not only water that we are getting from Kaliwa River, but also we want to make sure that their lives are their way of living is uplifted because of this project. It's really very long for us to track that journey to get that pre and prior informed consent. Considering probably my colleague here from Melvin Tan was able to get his FPIC in a very short time. But for government, it's really frustrating. The other thing that we want to remember when we have the public-private partnership, government has to make sure that we do the real meaning of ease of doing business, because even we at the government is really frustrated in coming up with going through the tedious process. So it's really important we have the true meaning of ease of doing business.
And to add to that, before you answer, Melvin, I would just like to ask a follow-up question to you as well. Because I think one of the main criticisms against the PPPs is that, for some they say it advances the capitalist agenda, that it prioritizes the business interests and dehado yung publiko. How can we ensure, or how can we assure the public that we are still prioritizing the public good and not just the business interests of the private companies involved?
Thank you, Joyce. So, the key is the regulatory framework. In the case of WAWA, the regulatory framework of MWS is defined. There is a process to account for the interests of everyone in the table, both government, private, and even obviously, and more importantly, the consumers themselves. Case in point, the WAWA bulk water supply project. So it's a mega project. It will boost, as I mentioned earlier, boost the water supply availability of Manila Water, the East Zone concessionaire, by about 30%. So 30% yung dagdag nun sa supply. But the cost of that project, based on the regulatory framework that is in place already by MWSS, is spread and paid for by everyone, not just the 30% or an X% or a portion. So, and because there is a socialized tariff framework already in place, those who have less pay less, and those who have more, they pay more because they go up the tariff bracket.
If I may add, the question raised a little earlier, how do we marry the interests of the public sector and the private sector? In our case, the Congress, when they gave the franchise law to our two concessionaires, they were considered public utility. Even the Supreme Court has decided that the two concessionaires are public utility. So they have to comply with the public utility rules and regulations, even in the rate of return.
All right, Attorney Terry, are you satisfied with the regulatory framework implementation?
Well, I think we have to disjoint MWSS and all the other regulatory agencies, particularly LUA. I think more needs to be done, particularly to avoid situations of regulatory capture. I think we have to we have to see some real reforms in LUA, because I think everyone would probably agree with me that in previous times, local water districts had really been subjected to political pressure in the localities, particularly because LWDs are line items in the budget, so they are subjected to congressional pressure, and today they are subjected to enterprise pressure because of JVs that are going into the local water district. So at the core of it is essentially a need for strong leadership at the highest levels of LUA. So I think that would basically turn the tables in moving away from a sense of regulatory capture towards a more independent LUA leadership towards local water districts. In respect to MWSS, to be fair to the regulatory office, in the various rounds of tariff rate adjustments, there has always been invitations to the public to basically express their concerns and to challenge the computations and to make a determination whether there is a relation between the projects being proposed and the tariff that they seek, the tariff increase that they are seeking from the public. So I think that is a good model which LUA should look at, to be very transparent in the manner by which they had been undertaking all of these regulatory mechanisms.
All right, thank you, Attorney Terry. Do we have more questions from our participants? Yes, sir.
I have a question for MWSS, just to share. Bobby, when the Kaliwa Dam was originally envisioned, at least in 2 administrations ago, we were looking at it as an EPC project. You recall, diba?
Yes.
What was the wisdom when 2016, why was it converted to a PPP? And engineering, procurement, also a construction project, not a PPP project. And why did it suddenly become a PPP?
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, the Kaliwa Dam project was approved by NEDA ICC in 2014 and under a PPP modality. However, it took us so long to take off the ground. And when we had the new president at the time, President Duterte, it's a PPP. Yeah, it's a PPP at 18 billion. And when it really took us a hard time to get off the ground, okay? Considering that we have to have the market survey who are interested, okay? And when we have the new president, President Duterte at the time, that there was a decision by the government to have an ODA. And we had the ODA we had the environmental compliance certificate at 2019. And yet we cannot implement the project because of the different clearances, permits and everything. So the President Duterte decided to have an ODA with China, and that is the one that we are doing right now. For the information of everybody, the two main components of Kaliwa Dam is the dam, which will be located in General Lacar of Quezon, and 21 kilometer of tunneling across the Sierra Madre. And right now we are doing the tunnel boring machine. We have excavated with the segmental lining. Once the tunnel boring machine progresses, there is automatic segmental lining. And we have about 1.7 kilometers already. We started in December. We know that there is a December, yes. There is a birth pains in doing all these things. So hopefully we will be able to finish the tunnel boring machine by the middle of 2026. Sir.
Okay, and with that, I was just informed that we've already run out of time for our first panel. So again, thank you very much to Ma'am Bobby Cleophas, Mr. Melvin Tan, and Attorney Terry Ridon. But before you go, let's have a photo opportunity with our President, Mr. Dindo Manhit, Sir RP Manhit, and Senator JB. Would you like to join the first panel as well? And to our guests who are here in the venue, we have coffee and some snacks available at just outside this venue. So if you guys want to get some snacks and coffee, you can do so while we're doing the photo opportunity. Thank you. You can use the back door to get coffee and snacks. All right, but we will now proceed, to save time, we will now proceed directly to our second panel. Okay? Okay. All right, let's proceed to the second panel. New Yorkers, everyone, please take your seats. All right. Okay, for our first panelist, may we call on Senator Joseph Victor J.V. Ejercito. He was hailed among the 10 outstanding young men in the field of public administration, and he was elected as Senator of the Republic of the Philippines in 2013 and again in 2022. So he is now in his second term, and at present, he continues to advocate for infrastructure development and transportation modernization, including the establishment of a robust railway system, which is expected to generate jobs for millions of Filipinos. He is also currently the Deputy Majority Leader and the chairman of the Senate Committee on Local Government and the Committee on Urban Planning, Housing, and Resettlement. Let's all welcome again the good one of the Senate, Senator J.V. Ejercito. All right. We would like to welcome to our panel Attorney Michael Toledo, Head of Government Relations and Public Affairs of Metro Pacific Investment Corporation, and also the Chairman of the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines. Let's welcome Attorney Mike Toledo. And of course, last but not least, we have Mr. Brett Lim, Head of Business Development of Acciona Construction Philippines. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Brett Lim. All right, just like in our first panel, gentlemen, we would like to ask you to deliver an opening statement for about 10 minutes. And I think the Senator has prepared the presentation for us. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Joyce. A pleasant good afternoon, everybody. Of course, to ADR, Stat Base, its head, Professor Lindo Manhit, and the rest, and everyone here, to the panelists, likewise, my very good friend, and my father's press secretary, Attorney Mike Toledo, Sir Brett Lim, and Joyce, nice to see you. We miss you at the Senate. From CNN before, di ba? Pag nakikita ko siya, ay, maganda ka pa sa umaga. Anyway, I'm here to discuss, of course. I just like to give you also an update. Good news, we just passed the PPP Act last Wednesday on second reading. It will be scheduled for third reading for bicameral on Tuesday, and hopefully it will be ratified on Wednesday. So before we go on break, the PPP Act would already be a law. So that's a good news. And I was tasked to shepherd and to sponsor the bill. Actually, it was not mine originally because it's supposed to be under the Committee on Public Works under Senator Bong Revilla. But then again, because it was a priority measure by the administration, the President himself and the Senate President, Mig Zubiri, requested me to take over. So nag-take over lang po ako. I was not there during the hearing. So it was a very difficult bill, very technical. I read it 3-4 times until now I still don't understand a lot of it. Very technical, but after much deliberation, weeks of deliberation, I think it's a very refined bill right now in the Senate. Because in the Senate, I'm not trying to imply anything, but we do our research and we do debates in the Senate. That's why we take a little bit longer to pass a lot of measures. But this time around, before I asked I have a presentation, a short presentation on what we should do. No? The PPP is just one facet. I think what we have to do is really to have a master plan, and probably that's what we lack because of the political system that we have. In 3 years and 6-year term, most officials, even the national officials, are only concerned of the short and medium term. Nakalimutan po natin yung long-term planning. That's probably the reason also why comparing us to the ASEAN neighbors, we are already lacking behind in terms of infrastructure development. Siguro, this si Attorney Terry, my former colleague, probably he would say that, ano bang assessment mo? We are behind by what? 25, 30 years in terms of infra development?
You can do it, sir.
But that's the sad part, and I'm hoping that we have to do a lot of catching. So, okay, so we can start. The very first bill that I filed in this Congress is the Comprehensive Master Plan for Infrastructure Development. So, as I mentioned, because of the dilemma that we have, because of our 3 and 6-year term, most of the leadership, most of the officials are concerned of the short and medium term. But if you talk about big infrastructure projects, that takes about probably 20, 30, even 50 years of planning. execution, and implementation. Diba? Dapat ganun. Even railway system, water management, dams, everything, power, that takes 30, 20, 30, or even 50 years of planning and execution. That's why I told myself that this is the very first bill that I filed, that whoever sits as president in the future, the infrastructure development has to continue. We need to have a roadmap, a blueprint that the government should be following. Probably all the other future presidents will have their own programs and pet projects, but at least the infrastructure development, the government should have a blueprint that they will follow in terms of infra development. If you, the next slide, if you look at the foreign direct investments, the Philippines is now lagging behind. Even Vietnam has overtaken us. They are getting twice, almost double of what we are getting. Usually Philippines is always top 3 before, top 5. Now it's Philippines, Indonesia. Please go back. Malaysia, Vietnam, no? Thailand is usually, no? But now Vietnam has overtaken us in terms of foreign direct investments. And I attribute that to 2 things: high cost of energy and poor infrastructure. Next. That's the flow of foreign direct investments in dollars. Again, we used to be in the top 5, but now, again, Vietnam, hopefully not other, sana ito na, no? We hope we can catch up with Vietnam very soon. Next, the GDP spending for public infrastructure the past decades has only been 2.68%. But now it increased to 5.8%. No, I would like to, no matter what we say about the past administration, President Duterte, at least he started yung massive infrastructure development and increased our infra spending GDP to 5%, no, from the usual 2% in so many decades. The target GDP spending for infra for this year is 5.3%, and the GDP spending on infrastructure towards the end of the President Duterte's term was 5.8. So hopefully if we can increase it, I think it will be better. Okay, next. In the latest Global Competitiveness Report, we rank 102nd out of 141 countries with the score of 41.5 out of 100 in terms of transport infrastructure. Among the Asian countries, the Philippines received the lowest rated railway service with a score of 2.4 ranking, 86 out of 101 countries globally. So talagang very poor ang ating infra. My idea of on how we can really spread out development and stimulate economic growth is to create, first of all, the growth triangle among the major ports, Subic, Batangas, and Manila, and linking it by railway, the railway system, which I have been pushing since I was still in Congress, and now it's becoming a reality. That in hindsight, no, siguro si Attorney Mike is here, talks on North Rail and South Rail was started during the time of President Estrada. That was 1998. So we lost already 20 years. But now it's already being done. The good news, yung North-South Commuter Line, it will be online hopefully by 2027, 2028. So sayang yung 20 or 25 years, no? I can remember on hindsight, 1998, North and South Rail was already on the plans. So probably that's one of the reasons why we improved the PPP. We put now timelines and we improved and we reformed para po hindi na siya puro PowerPoint presentation. It will now be an honest to goodness PPP. Next, if you can link, if you look at the balik tayo. We will go back, if you look at the North and South, those are the original lines. Each province can become an economic growth area. It will become a growth node. For every station, it will become an opportunity for every province, no, to have commercial areas, industrial parks, and the like. So we will be able to spread out the development and decongest Metro Manila as well. Next. That is the growth triangle that we are envisioning. If it will be linked by the railway, North-South Commuter Line, Subic Clark Railway, hopefully the South Long Haul and the North Long Haul very soon. Next. The Panay Railways also will be next. Hopefully the Mindanao Railway System, but because it was given to China and Exim Bank, I'm hoping that the government can renegotiate, because this will be very vital for Mindanao's economic growth, and not only that, for lasting peace in Mindanao, no? Because one of the reasons why there is secessionist movement, there's rebellion, there's insurgency in Mindanao before, because of lack of opportunities. And I do believe that when we create growth areas in the different parts of Mindanao, it will also solve and be the way to lasting peace in Mindanao. Next. That will be the growth node that will be established in every province, that the railway system would pass through. Of course, we will have the industrial parks, we can have commercial areas, business districts, housing, and of course, as a support for the agri-industry, food terminals and the agri-terminal. So, to give an example, in Bulacan, in Tarlac, in Pangasinan, hopefully in up to Ilocandia, and going south, Batangas, Quezon, Laguna, Sorsogon, and so on. So, railway stations can serve as economic hubs. Next. A developed country is not a place where the poor have cars, it's where the rich use the public transportation system. It's according to Gustavo Petro, the President of Republic of Colombia. He was formerly mayor of Bogota. At least now, it's already moving through PPP, MRT-7. The Metro Manila Subway Project has commenced already, the boring. The LRT-1, Cavite, hopefully it will be online. Ano ba? Maybe soon, very soon, no? PNP Clark. The North-South commuter line, as I mentioned, hopefully by 2026, 2027, we can see it operational. If you pass through SCTEX, may kita nyo na po yung mga posts, no? And the rail, where the North-South commuter line trains will pass. In our South Long Haul project, I'm hoping that the government can negotiate, because also it was given to China, but as we all know, we are having problems with China now. Well, probably because of the dispute and among others. Okay, next. Michael, that's yours. That's PPP. Next. The PNR, while we are waiting for the modern rail, we purchased. Can you believe that the last time the PNR bought new train sets was 40 years ago? So when I was the one who defended the budget of the OTR, we bought new train sets to service the PNR lines while we are waiting for the modern standard gauge railway. So now we have new train sets, 9 train sets, after 40 years. Okay? I'm very happy that the President also mentioned during his State of the Nation address that underlying logic to our infrastructure development is economic efficiency. We're opening up all our gateways to mobilize goods and services at less cost and in less time, and ultimately to drive the economy forward. So that's the good news, that after President Duterte really pushed for infrastructure development, President Bongbong Marcos is likewise pushing for infra development. Like, just to give you, before I end, I'd just like to give you, with regards to the PPP Act, just the background. The overarching objective for the infrastructure sector over the medium term is to build better more under the new administration. One of the strategies identified to sustain the annual infrastructure spending at 5.6%, 5 to 6% of the GDP, with the public-private partnership, or the PPP, will play a key role. Through the years, the concept of Build, Operate, Transfer, or BOT, has evolved into what we now know as the PPP. Republic Act, or RA number 6957, otherwise known as the BOT law, was enacted in 1990. So it's just right, 30 years already since enactment. And it was considered the first BOT law in Asia. It was subsequently amended in 1994. But after more than 30 years since the passage of the first BOT law, the government has broadened and deepened its understanding of structuring and managing PPP contracts. The infrastructure market and certain aspects of the policy environment have likewise changed much since then. Thus, the need to update the existing law through identifying critical reforms needed to incorporate these lessons learned and to adopt best practices as currently observed. So I will just mention some probably yung major reforms. You can be rest assured that with the new PPP, we will always determine the most advantageous proposal. No? The implementing agency will now have the right to choose the most advantageous proposal that will best serve public interest. No? So these are the key reforms, and that most of the joint venture projects will now have the benefit of getting an interagency vetting process by the NEDA board and ICC. The national government gets to have a holistic view in terms of the mandate, function, and the long-term viability of the GOCC concerned, and is able to set parameters, terms, conditions to be included in the PPP contract. So, with that, sorry for the quite long, but I'm hoping that with the master plan be approved, the PPP will help much in the execution. So that's all. Thank you very much, and good afternoon.
All right. Thank you very much, Senator J.V. Ejercito. Now let's hear it from Attorney Mike Toledo, sir.
Pleasant good afternoon to everyone. Well, first of all, I did not know that I have to make an opening statement, but it's okay. Perhaps I would just like first to congratulate again Senator JV, because really we need this bill yesterday. And he has really worked hard on this. So with indulgence, let's again give him a warm round of applause, please. And also I would like to thank Bobby Cleophas for the nice comments that you gave regarding the private partners, the private concessionaires, which is Maynilad and Manila Water. And I will definitely relay it to my chairman and to the president of Maynilad, so naman parang umiti naman sila. Well, we don't have to revisit what happened in the past administration. What is important is we now have a law, there's a franchise, and then eventually Maynilad will also go public. And the partnership that we have through all these years, especially now under you, has been very fluid, very fruitful, and very transparent. So maraming pong salamat. If I may digress a bit, 2 days ago we had a mining conference, the International Mining Conference, which was held after 3 or 4 years because of the pandemic. And Dindo Manhit was one of our distinguished speakers, and he spoke very eloquently on the importance of mining and the economy. I mention this because mining is one clear example of PPP, private-public partnership. The state owns the minerals, and the miners or the private sector is the one given the privilege or the license to mine. And then they pay the right taxes, they give payment to the LGUs, royalties, etc., etc., etc. Now, I mentioned that because I just wanted to share with you that PPP is not only with infrastructure, but also with mining and natural resource development. Well, perhaps I can just briefly share with you what I said when I spoke in Singapore during the Nomura Investment Conference or Summit. There I mentioned that Metro Pacific, of which we are the largest tollway operators, we also have, as you know, power generation. We have Meralco for power distribution. We have Engen for power generation. We have tollways, the largest tollways network in the country, and still increasing. And of course, we have Maynilad, we have water, and we also have hospitals. And we were happy to know that there has been a pivot. Before, it used to be focused on ODA. During the time of President Aquino, there was they put up the PPP Center, and then there was focus on PPP. But for some reason, during the time of President Duterte, they decided to go more on ODA. Well, the thing with ODA is that you're actually using the government funds. No? It is from funds that is culled from the payment of taxes. The thing with ODA is that everybody pays for the service. We believe in users pay, the users pay system, because in a PPP, only those who use the infrastructure built actually pays. Now, for example, if you build a long railway station in Luzon, but only people from Luzon will benefit from it, why do you have people from the Visayas and Mindanao pay for it? That's why PPP is good in that sense, not to mention the fact that you can tap on the expertise of the private sector as well. And then, of course, by going PPP, you free up a lot of the funds that can be earmarked for education, health, and other socio-economic development, because now it will be the private sector who will fund it and then enter into an agreement with government, whether it's operation and maintenance. Now, we're very happy with the BBM administration, President Marcos Jr. administration, and its shift back to PPP. And also equally happy that there was an announcement at the outset by his economic managers, led by NEDA and Secretary Jokno, that they would like to put priority on infra projects. They will continue to, as mentioned by Secretary JV, 5 to 6% of GDP will be on infra. And they said categorically and unequivocally that one, they will make sure that if there's funding needed from the government, be given priority. Number two, the permitting and licensing process will be expedited. Number three, a clear example, President Marcos a few months ago just issued an EO which actually included a private sector representative in the PPP governing board. That, in my view, is a clear example or a clear manifestation of the sincerity and seriousness of the Marcos Jr. administration to ensure that PPP succeeds. Because the involvement of the private sector will definitely have a big role to play in infrastructure development and nationwide development. Also, the fact that GSIS just lately invested in Metro Pacific Investment Corporation. GSIS, as you know, is an government insurance company. It's one of the biggest government agencies in terms of assets and in terms of funds. And they have decided to invest close to 12% of the pension funds on Metro Pacific. That, in my view, again, is a clear manifestation of the seriousness of government to involve the private sector. They see the opportunity with Metro Pacific in terms of the infrastructure development, not only in the Philippines, but in the whole of Asia. Because Metro Pacific is present in Vietnam. We have a tollway project in Vietnam. We have a power project in Singapore. We have a tollway project in Thailand. And we will be building it's a 600-kilometer tollway project in Indonesia. So the GSI has seen, and government has seen, that indeed there is something that can be done directly by the government investing in the private sector. And then again, also perhaps as a last point, BBM has mentioned clearly in many of his speeches that he was encouraging the local government units to go PPP. Not just the national, even the local. Be more creative, think out of the box. Why don't you do that? And I'm proud and happy to say that even before that pronouncement, the Metro Pacific Group, the MVP Group, has done so. If you visit Cebu, it's a beautiful island in the south, of which I came from, by the way. You have the bridge, it's called Cebu-Cordova Bridge. And that bridge it's a 32 billion peso bridge, and it was built in record time. Without the pandemic, it would have been faster. And that bridge was not a PPP with the national government. It was a PPP with the local government, with the municipality of Cordova and the city of Cebu and us. Initially, there was perhaps some apprehension on the part of the financing groups, the banks, because usually they would fund only projects involving the national government. But lo and behold, clearly it can be done and that is a clear evidence, the best evidence rule, because I'm a lawyer, best evidence rule is what you see. And clearly, that is a clear manifestation of the successful PPP project between the municipality and the private sector. So I guess that should also be encouraged. So that was what I shared with Nomura, and I think that also answers all the possible questions. So that's about it. So thank you so much for your kind attention. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Attorney Mike Toledo. And of course, Mr. Brett Lim.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, there we go. This vlog is really doing something on my voice, so please bear with me. But thank you again to StratBase for giving us the opportunity as Acciona to talk about how we've seen this. Good afternoon, Senator Hercito, Attorney Mike.
Oh, briefly, Acciona was the one who built the bridge.
Let's pull up the slide. I think that we didn't talk about this clearly, but
we didn't plan this, huh?
but our first slide is a picture of that beautiful bridge that we put together. Actually, no, it's going to be a short presentation. Don't worry. But again, I think what I heard from the first two speakers echoes very well to how Acciona, a Spanish construction company, feels about the Philippines. I don't think Acciona is a household name, and many people might not know who Acciona is. So let me introduce Acciona through a quick video. Then I'd like to run you through the work we're doing here in the Philippines, and you'll be surprised to see we're building on very important things. Then I'd like to flow into kind of the challenge as we talk about revitalization. We are building on the rail projects, 3 packages there. But there are challenges, and I want to be able to voice that as a constructor so that we can start to talk about how we can bring building faster and forward. Because ultimately, the PPPs are great, and it's a great way for us to bring our money in here, but at the end of the day, projects need to get done. So with that, I will hand it over, and let's play the first video. Is there sound? So I'll voice over while we it's a century-old company as we go through. There. Is it? Are we going to get? Okay, one more try, because I think really what the video is supposed to highlight is, as a global leader in this space, there is a lot that we're doing and a lot of expertise that we do want to bring to the country. I can't talk about all of that. I honestly don't know much of it. But hopefully the video works. One last try. Okay, maybe maybe I'll just do a quick voiceover. Acciona does everything. We do renewable energy, we do PPPs in the medical hospital space, rail, port, bridges. We have an electric vehicle line, silence. We're doing a lot, and I think it's a shame that we aren't able to see it. We're in 40 countries around the world. There we go. I think it's working.
Which allows us to respond to society's needs. We promote technological innovation in all of our projects. We guarantee access to clean, 100% renewable energy. Build solid infrastructure to guarantee a sustainable development. We guarantee access to clean water to millions of people. improve people's lives. We promote circular economy solutions to protect our environment. Because we know that investing in the planet is the wisest decision. The results speak for themselves. This is the way we do things. We are experts in designing a better planet. Acciona, business as unusual.
You enjoyed it. But if we go to the next slide, we'll kind of point to the work that we're doing here in the region. Initially, when Acciona started, we started with our headquarters in Singapore, but recently moved our headquarters for the region to here, Manila, because this is where the action is. This is where the growth is. This is where we've been winning and building and partnering with great companies like Metro Pacific on bridges, on water. So just to kind of give you an idea where we are, we have currently 3 water treatment plants across Laguna. We've built a very beautiful bridge that you saw on our first slide with Metro Pacific and Cebu. And as we currently are working, we're working on 2 packages of the commuter rail in the north and 1 in the south. Again, I think this good senator was talking about how these are really important for driving development and growth throughout the country, and we're happy to be a big part of that. Beyond construction, that's what we do today. We want to invest, and so hearing about the PPP Act, we were actually consulted. We've talked to people. We've given our views. We want to be a builder that invests. We want equity. We want to join our partners in this, and so I think the Philippines is this bright spot of tremendous growth. And as I was really excited to hear the master plan, because the master plan is what gives us foreign companies the confidence that things are going to happen. And as we put feet on the ground, as we put money into these builds, we want to know what the big plan is. We can't be figuring it out every 3 years. We have. But with that, I also wanted to use this as the opportunity to kind of raise some of the challenges that we're facing right now. I think the good senator showed us a doubling of the budget towards infrastructure. It's something we've never seen before. And it's amazing, it's what brought us here. But with that also comes the challenges of, have we built to the scale and the speed ever in our lifetime? And with that, one of the on-the-ground challenges that we see today is the right-of-way. As we're trying to build, will we get right-of-way quickly? Do we have the resources to deliver? Anecdotally, for us, as we build on some of the packages of the rail, we continue to be challenged as to how we can start speeding these things up, how we can work with government, how we can start to enable. Because if right-of-way doesn't come, investors get scared. And if investors get scared, this promise of a golden age of infrastructure will continue to be delayed. I think I'll end it there, because I think this is more of a broader discussion among us. But again, thank you very much for the time, and we really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Brent, and thank you again to our speakers for your very comprehensive opening statements. So to start our discussion, Senator JB, you mentioned earlier that the PPP bill will go through the BICAM on Tuesday and will most likely be ratified on Wednesday before Congress goes on break, on the Undas break.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. So, siguro sir, how do you think will this proposed measure create an enabling environment for businesses to participate in infrastructure development? How else can this attract more investors in the country po?
I guess the reforms that we have introduced in the PPP, it came from the years since BOT law was passed in 1990s. Again, a lot of experiences, both good and bad. we learn from those experiences and we try to improve it with the PPP. And I guess this will give more confidence to those proponents, would-be proponents, to invest. And likewise, we will make sure that the government, through the implementing agency, will have a hand in choosing the best option possible. For example, there was a provision, yung first in-time approach, that whoever submits the first proposal will have the priority already. So you cannot choose or you cannot evaluate the others unless you reject the first, no? And we change all of that so that again, the implementing agency will have the chance to choose the best option. What if it happens if you reject the first only to find that the second or the third will be inferior, or accept the first only to find out that the second and third will be better? So at least now we will make sure that through this reform that we will get the best possible offer for the government to choose.
All right. How about from the private sector? Are you satisfied with the current PPP bill measure, or would you like, or are there improvements that you wish you could have seen, or you will still see?
Well, definitely, as mentioned eloquently by Senator JV, that was an old law. So there's really a need to rethink, revisit, review, reassess. So we are totally in agreement. In fact, it is good that the good senator and his staff has also been coordinating with us in the private sector, the stakeholders, in coming up with possible suggestions, possible revisions or amendments to the proposed bill. So that is again a good coordination with government and the private sector. So we are happy to hear that it has already been passed on second reading, and it will go on third reading, and it will go to the BICAM. So this is really something that we are looking forward to. But just very briefly, a law is only as good as how it is implemented and executed. So that's very crucial. That is why perhaps as the private sector, the only things, the three items that we are very concerned with, especially in infrastructure project, you sort of mentioned it already. One is right of way. The delay in the delivery of right of way from government actually causes a lot of problems. Not to mention the financial and economic and practical problems. No? One, there's a delay in the project, the costs will go up, cost overruns, which at the end of the day will somehow be passed on to the consumer. So that's why we are really hoping that the right-of-way issues can be addressed quickly. The good thing is, I can see the positive, the personal experience when we had this right-of-way issue that was holding our interconnector project, which connects Calax, that is ours, with Ramon Ang's Star. The good thing about it is that when I went to see the executive secretary, who was the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and I explained to him, the reason for the delay is there is this judge who, for some reason or the other, is sitting on a decision. You know what he did? And that's what I call action right away. Called the court administrator, Justice Raul, and then told him, who is this judge? Do you know? Tell him if he does not issue a decision, an ombudsman case will be filed against him. So that week, the decision came out. So, but again, these are perhaps exceptions rather than the general rule. So right away must be addressed. Number two, regulation. Sometimes, for example, the regulation governing, let's say, tollways and tollway interoperability, the rules are a bit dated, and they really needed to be renewed, no, and be up to date. And in fact, sometimes the implementing rules and regulations are even more advanced than the law itself. No? So I guess that is one thing. And the flip-flopping also of regulation, just like in mining, that is something that we don't want. Businessmen, we want predictability. We have to know so we can plan accordingly. You cannot change rules in midstream. By changing rules in midstream, you actually discourage a lot of investors, both domestic and foreign. And then, of course, lastly, of course, revenue.
I just want to say that we're very happy to hear that in the latest version, the technical requirement comes in first deposit. Us as global builders, we build to the best of our ability. It's not always about the lowest possible price. It's about the long term, and so we're happy that that's been incorporated.
I see a question from our audience, but first, before that, I just like Senator JV to answer first. Attorney Mike mentioned a couple of concerns. How do we ensure, sir, that enforcement is done well? That although we have this PPP bill, that infrastructure projects will not be abused, especially, and will not be subject
Or
to
delayed.
political decisions.
Well, probably one of the reforms that we introduced, a lot of proponents or those interested to go into PPP are concerned because of the length of approval, no, of the agencies. No? Sometimes a lot of them do not want to go to MEDA ICC because it's unpredictable. Like doon tayo in the previous administrations, they only had MEDA, I think, only meets once, twice a year. So by the time they approve the project, probably 3-4 years has lapsed already. But one good thing with President Bongo Marcos, that I think from the time he took over, there were already 7 or 8 NEDA board meetings, I think every month. But once his administration is over, we can attend. No? But what we introduced in this measure is that we already put timelines. No? That 120 days in case there's no action that will be deemed approved already. No? So they have to act already, whether reject it or accept it. So we put timelines in each step already. So you can be rest assured that the public-private partnership will now move swiftly, faster. Kaya nga sabi ko, hindi na ito puro PowerPoint presentation. Unlike before, it was a joke because it takes forever. Government agencies, perhaps implementing agencies, I'm sure they have experienced it. Sometimes they deliberately sit on a lot of proposals. So that will not happen anymore because we already introduced timelines in each, even NEDA will have to meet every month. So that's one reforms that we have introduced to ensure that things will now move faster.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Can you introduce your name, risk, and organization, please?
Thank you. I'm Alexis Mucha, President of IDEA, Institute of Development and Economic Analysis, and also Chairman of the UP Visayas Foundation. Senator, I'm very proud to say that you are the one I voted for. You are the good guy, okay? And I tell everyone who asks me, you are the one who does his homework. So, thank you.
But I'm not implying, and the good one is I'm selling myself. I'm not implying to it. I'm not implying that someone is the bad.
I have two predicates for my question. The first predicate is going back at the start of the Ninoy administration. Then the PWH Secretary Babes Almendras was saying the engineering districts were chopping. They were dividing projects so that the threshold for national review it will not pass faster in a review. National change. Okay.
I think it's Babe Simpson. It's a very good.
Rene Almendras.
Rene Almendras.
Correct.
Babe Simpson.
Rene Almendras. Second predicate. Our PPP under the Pinoy administration was doing a very good job, and in fact, it was recognized internationally as a best practice by international organizations. But under the Duterte administration, it was a 180-degree turn, no more PPP, budget na lang. Now, again, because of the big deficit that we have, the government has no choice again. Right? There are not enough direct funds to do that, so we have to go back to PPP. Okay. My question relates to both is this. There's a comment that LTUs are now empowered to have their own PPPs. But again, just like the chop-chop phenomenon, they would prefer to do it themselves because pag ni-review sa PPP center, nasisilip sila. They don't want that kind of transparency. So my question, Mr. Senator, whether it will be in the law or in the IRR that will follow, will that kind of a chop-chop phenomenon where the transparency and disclosure of the projects will be sort of circumvented at the LGU level? Thank you.
First, it's on the law that local PPP projects will also be encouraged. As long as they do not interfere in the national master plans or master plan or projects, then they can go ahead with it. Otherwise, it has to go through the vetting and the screening by the NEDA ICC. As long as it doesn't intersect or doesn't run in conflict with the national master plan, so they can go ahead with it. For example, if Makati supposedly was they wanted to undertake their own subway. Hopefully it pushes to, but because of the territorial dispute, parang it's been shared. But it will have to go through NEDA because they have to talk to the national master government for the master plan so that it can link up to the subway system and the North-South Commuter Line and other. So in that way, we will all be in coordination, no? that the links. But it will be encouraged. Nagkaroon lang pa I just want to point out one thing because there was also a clamor that, for example, utilities should be treated as local. No? Kasi for example, water districts, electric cooperatives are local. But you see, water management usually passes through several boundaries about water, so that we were firm and it was non-negotiable that utilities will be treated as national, so that it will pass through NEDA and ICC, because most of the time GOCCs or local that go into local PPPs, they really don't have the technical capability, unlike the NEDA and ICC vetting, no? Sad to say that most of the GOCC's heads are political appointees na talagang wala namang kinalaman, walang alam doon sa ano. So they are just being taken, a lot of entities are just taking advantage. So we want to make sure this time around that most of these projects will go through the NEDA ICC for review. And at least we will have one more reform that we introduced, that government has to have 50% stake at least pa rin, so that the NEDA ICC can always review, no? If ever they go into PPP. So those are the reforms that we introduced right now, and those are experiences, no? Mga kumbaga bad experiences, and we want to learn from our mistakes that it doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have more questions from our participants? Okay, if you don't have, I'll ask my next question. Sir, in the presentation of Dr. Rizal Buendia earlier, he presented his findings in a study conducted, a comparative analysis between the upper Wawa, the Wawa Bulk Water Supply Project and the Kaliwadan Project. One of his policy recommendations was to broaden the transparency and accountability measures or mechanisms in infrastructure projects. How will this PPP bill, sir, help do this? Paano mas magkakaroon ng transparency and accountability in the implementation of infrastructure projects?
As I mentioned earlier, water management projects, because it will transcend different boundaries, will now be considered national projects. So because of that, it will pass through NEDA ICC, and I think when we pass through the ICC, it will be stricter, it will be more open, it will be more transparent. Unlike if it's, if we remain status quo, nangyayari before, a lot are taking advantage because they only have to deal with the local water utilities or local government who doesn't have the technical capability. Unlike if we pass through or use the technical skills and capability of the NEDA ICC, then you can be rest assured that transparency will also be assured. And just to add also, yung water management has to be added also in this master plan that we talked about, because we really have to plan about it. No? We're having a water crisis, and as of the moment, so we really have to do the planning and include it in the master plan. It's not only the transportation system. We include water management and also power as well.
To the private sector, considering the PPP bill that will be passed soon, hopefully enacted into law or signed into law before the end of the year, looking into the future, how do you think will this help the development of infrastructure in the Philippines in the future? And consequently, what are the other emerging trends and technologies do you think or do you anticipate will play an important role in further advancing infrastructure development efforts in the Philippines?
Maybe I'll start with the big trends, and I think we were murmuring about it earlier, is the renewable energy push. We have this huge requirement, and we've released a lot of that potential in licenses. But ultimately, it's going to start to scale back into other ways that we need to start constructing along the utility lines. How do we get that connected around ports if we're going to do offshore wind? These are actually opportunities that we're looking at as constructors plus investors to start building, these starting points for this renewable energy push. We'd love to see the opportunity for transmission being something that could PPP privately at the last mile to help speed up a lot of the development. Again, there's a larger legal question around that, but I think this lays the groundwork for us to start talking about where we need to be and where else we need to build to kind of push the ideas forward.
How about from Metro Pacific, sir?
I concur with everything he said. Yeah. We'll do it together. But maybe just to add a little an addendum, as far as the toll, and specifically, just to be specific, because as I mentioned, we're into a lot of things. But for the tollways, for example, we have focused on mobility and the use of technology to ensure mobility of people, goods, and services. So it is more than just infrastructure or tollways development, but actually mobility by providing additional services. Like for example, we are using technology like an app wherein you can download and you can already get information with respect to the traffic situation. You can already get information as to the amount of the toll that's going to be paid. We have, of course, emergency services and all these things, additional things that to make sure that the driving public will drive conveniently. So that's essentially just the addition of the use of technology in ensuring that we provide good services to our tollway users.
All right, since you mentioned the public, sir, and perhaps to close our discussion, for Senator JP, sir, we've been talking about how the private sector will benefit from the PPP bill. How about the public, sir? Since we have the media here, the civil society is watching us, how will the public, the Filipino citizens, benefit from the passage of this measure, sir?
Well, since we are not really a rich nation, no? Our fiscal space is limited because we're still recovering. That's why anything that will be able to help stimulate economic development, especially infrastructure. Again, the plan is to spend 5 to 6% to sustain this. Of course, we have the ODA, the existing ODA from Japan, and other projects that will be derived from the General Appropriations Act. But we need that PPP, no, really to help realize and help the government in its catching up effort. We have a lot of catching up to do. As I mentioned, I think we are 30 years behind in terms of infra development to our ASEAN neighbors. So Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia invested heavily in infra in the 1990s. Ngayon pa lang. So 2020, so 30 years. And I think by providing this framework on the public-private partnership, it will definitely give confidence much to would-be proponents that there is already a framework that they can already look or bank on as they try to invest in the country. And last but not the least, the public can be assured that the best offer or the best deal will be the priority with the passage of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our speakers, Senator J.V. Ejercito, Attorney Mike Toledo, and Mr. Brett Lim. Again, let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you, sir. And before you go, let's have a photo opportunity first, please. May we call on our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. R.P. Manhit, and also our President. Here with the background though. Okay, we're just waiting for Mr. From Professor Lindo Manhit. Okay. Your initial photos muna with them.
All right. Thank you very much to our panelists for that very comprehensive discussion. So it has been a very productive and informative afternoon. And to officially close our event today, let's hear from Department of Transportation Undersecretary Timothy John Batan, who unfortunately can't be with us physically today because he is attending the pre-bid conference for the Ninoy Aquino International Airport PPP project. However, he was kind enough to send us a video recording. So let's direct our attention to the screens and let's hear from Yusek Batan. Let's give him a hand, please.
To the President of the Stratbase ADR Institute, Professor Victor Andres Manhit, panelists, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am Timothy John Batan, Undersecretary for Planning and Project Development at the Department of Transportation, and on behalf of our Secretary, Secretary Jaime Bautista, I am pleased to be here today to share with you the public-private partnership for PPP projects pipeline to the UTR with a focus on modernizing the Philippine airspace by building alternative gateways. As you will see and hear about today, we are mindful that the UTR alone will not be able to successfully and timely develop a comprehensive and all-encompassing transport modernization program that will bridge the gap between where we are now and where we envision to bring our transportation sector. This is why we are thankful for this opportunity to share our plans with all of you today in the hopes of encouraging potential partners to actively participate in the transportation PPP projects in the UTR's pipeline. Shown on this slide are some of the many challenges faced by the Philippines transport sector, as well as other sectors on which the transportation sector has a direct impact. For example, based on the latest JICA Finance Transport Study conducted for our National Capital Region in 2017 to 2019, the annual direct economic cost of traffic congestion is 3.5 billion pesos per day or 1.277 billion pesos per year. To give context, this is equivalent to 7.7% of Philippines' GDP pre-pandemic in 2019, 260% of foreign direct investments into the Philippines, and 7.6% of the market capitalization of all listed companies in the Philippine Stock Exchange. In terms of social welfare services, this annual economic cost is equivalent to the cost of more than 1 million public school classrooms, more than 2,000 provincial hospitals, and more than 4 million hectares of irrigated land. As you see on the slide, transportation also contributes to the high cost of logistics in the Philippines, which was estimated in a study by the International Finance Corporation of the World Bank Group to make up 27% of cost of sales as of 2018. While the Philippines' ranking in the World Bank's Logistics Performance Index has improved from 60th in 2018 to 43rd out of 139 countries in 2023, more needs to be done. Finally, despite our vast and stunning tourism destinations, and even with the tourism sector already accounting for 6.2% of GDP in 2022, the Philippines still only ranks 75th out of 117 countries based on a 2022 World Economic Forum report. Notably, it would exceed one's imagination just how much more and how much faster the Philippines can grow as we address the transportation issues and bottlenecks that exist today. Zooming in to the Philippines aviation sector, we are currently facing several challenges, including undercapacity of our existing passenger terminal buildings landside, constrained capacity to accommodate more aircraft movements airside, low service quality manifested in long queues, lengthy waiting times, and other passenger inconveniences, and suboptimal revenue generation leading to underinvestment, as manifested by several independent studies that have been conducted on some of our airports. On January 1, 2023, CAAP experienced power issues within their Air Traffic Management Center, which affected air traffic control for the entire country. Further, our studies have shown that 8 airports have already exceeded capacity based on 2019 actual passenger traffic vis-a-vis 2020-25 projections. In response to these challenges shown in the previous slides, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. have given the directive to keep the Philippines momentum going and to build better more. Following through our President's directive, the DOTR, under the leadership of Secretary Jaime Bautista, has cast the vision of transforming the Philippines transport industry and elevating it to global standards, characterized by comfortable, accessible, safe, and affordable transport services throughout the country. DOTR is bridging this gap towards our vision for the Philippines transportation sector by developing infrastructure and delivering transport services across our 4 operating sectors in airports and aviation, maritime seaports, railways, and road infrastructure. Mindful that many large-scale transportation mega projects have implementation timelines that exceed the 6-year term of one presidential administration, DOTR will actively seek to build better and build more by continuing and finishing projects from the previous administration's Build program, starting and where possible finishing new projects within this administration, and also starting new projects that may have to be passed on for continuation by the next administration. I will not go through all of the projects on this slide, but just to note how many more projects are in the pipeline of the DOTR for the aviation sector. Here you will see 24 airport projects that are for investment approval or that are currently in phase 1, the planning and project development phase, vis-a-vis the other projects that are being implemented and that are already operational. A number of these projects will be implemented via public-private partnership, which you will hear more later in my presentation. DOTR would like to highlight, though, that pursuing this directive, the President's directive of building more projects, is faced with the stark reality of the global post pandemic fiscal crunch, characterized, for example, by the Philippines' debt to GDP ratio increasing from around 40% in 2019 pre pandemic to around 60% in 2022, and the smallest increase in the Philippines' national government budget between fiscal years 2022 to 2023. Moreover, in addition to the macroeconomic considerations in the previous slide, another constraint faced by the DOTR is very limited fiscal space available in the near term due to the funding requirements of already contracted and already ongoing projects in the railway sector, most of which are financed with official development assistance. As shown in this slide, even after considering both programmed and unprogrammed appropriations for the DOTR, and even assuming that DOTR is allocated to close to 10% of the national government's fiscal space envelope, ongoing rail projects are already absorbing and utilizing more than 90% of the fiscal space available to DOTR, at least up to 2024 or possibly up to 2025 and even 2026. While the fiscal space is projected to loosen in the medium term, between 2025 and 2028, when the funding requirements of the current batch of ongoing rail projects start tapering down, projects still need to be implemented in the near term, or between 2024 and 2026. This leads to DOTR's dual strategy of first accelerating the mobilization of private sector resources, particularly in the near term, when DOTR's fiscal space is constrained due to the funding requirements of the ongoing rail projects. And second, preparing new projects for the medium and the long term to be financed with an optimal mix of both public and private sector resources. To implement this dual strategy referred to in the previous slide, DOTR has been aggressively undertaking planning and project development activities to roll out a private sector finance projects pipeline, particularly for the near term, while DOTR's fiscal space is constrained, and private and public sector finance projects in the medium to long term when fiscal space available to DOTR loosens up. Mindful that successful and timely implementation of large-scale mega projects requires sufficient and robust project preparation, DOTR has been aggressively fundraising and lining up project preparation resources to support the credible development of both its private and public sector finance pipeline. On the left side of this slide, you will see DOTR's medium to long-term public sector finance pipeline, which DOTR is programming to be at the 1.9 trillion peso level. For this, DOTR is targeting to fundraise an industry benchmark 1% of project preparation resources, or approximately 19 billion pesos. To date, some of the major project preparation resources that are being secured by DOTR include a 5.7 billion peso project preparation facility from the Asian Development Bank and around 3.3 billion pesos from the Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank. On the right side of the slide, you will see DOTR's short to long-term private sector finance pipeline, which currently consists of around 41 transportation PPP projects. To ensure financial viability and bankability while maintaining optimal terms for government and service levels for the public, DOTR has engaged and will be engaging project preparation and transaction advisory consultants from three sources. First, from the Project Development and Monitoring Facility of the Philippines PPP Center. Second, the Asian Development Bank's Office of Public-Private Partnership. And third, from the World Bank Group's International Finance Corporation. Further to our President's directive to build better more, DOTR notes that one of its responses to the question, how are we building better to build more, is by broadening and diversifying our funding strategies for transportation projects, including by actively mobilizing private sector resources. As has been noted by our economic managers, there have been measures
taken to ensure that our efforts to attract private sector investments is matched by appropriate and responsive institutional reforms, such as the revised implementing rules and regulations for the BOT law, which was adopted in a record time in October 2022, and the upcoming PPP Act, which is expected to be passed by Congress very soon. Pursuant to international best practice, DOTR is developing its solicited PPPs pipeline and is reviewing and tendering its unsolicited PPPs pipeline with the support of international project preparation and transaction advisory consultants and experts coming from three sources that I earlier mentioned. On this slide, you will see DOTR's PPPs pipeline grouped according to these three sources: the PPP Centers BMF, the ADB's Office of Public-Private Partnership, and the World Bank Group's IFC. With this strategy, DOTR aims to develop well-structured PPP concessions that strike a balance between ensuring financial viability and bankability and maintaining optimal terms for government and optimal service levels for the public. This slide shows DOTR's PPP contracts procurement pipeline, which currently highlights the steps towards DOTR's engagement of its project preparation and transaction advisory consultants. Under the blue column are the PPP projects to be supported by the PPP Center's PDMF facility. Under this, note that last August 17, 2023, DOTR and PPP Center signed 4 contracts for the project preparation and transaction advisory consultants for one maritime sector project, the Manila Bay Pasig River Laguna Lake Ferry Project or the Mapalio Project, one rail sector project, the North Bohol Project, and 2 road sector projects, the NCRS Busway and the Cebu BRT project. Under the red column are the PPP projects to be supported by the ADB-OPPP, under which there are 3 active advisory contracts covering the Ninoy Aquino International Airport PPP project, the Metro Manila Subway Operations and Maintenance PPP project, and the North-South Commuter Railway or ONM PPP project. Finally, under the green column are the PPP projects to be supported by the IFC, the World Bank Group. Engagement with the IFC is ongoing and their project preparation and transaction advisory services will commence soon. The succeeding slides will highlight some of our aviation and airports PPP projects, starting with the NAIA solicited PPP project. The NAIA PPP project recently obtained investment approval from the board of our National Economic Development Authority, the NEDA board, which is chaired by no less than our president. While NAIA is and continues to be the primary international gateway of the country, NAIA has been plagued with a multitude of long-standing challenges, which the NAIA PPP project will address. Under this project, the concessionaire will be procured to increase the airport's capacity to at least 62 million passengers per annum with a combination of capital investments and operational improvements that will expand NAIA's terminal buildings and enhance operational efficiencies. The concessionaire will supply air traffic control equipment, install baggage handling systems, IT, and other equipment for the improved operation and maintenance of the airport's airside and landside facilities. The concessionaire's aeronautical revenues will consist of passenger service charges, landing and takeoff fees, aircraft parking, packing, and cargo and other fees. The concessionaire will be allowed to conduct airport-related commercial activities within the project plan. This project's estimated project cost is 170.6 billion pesos to be implemented under a rehabilitate, operate, expand, transfer contractual arrangement with a concession period of 15 plus 10 years. Bidding for the NAIA PPP project has commenced with the publication of the instructions to bidders last August 23 and with the pre-bid conference happening today, September 22, at the Asian Development Bank. Next is the New Manila International Airport project, which involves the development of a new international airport in the municipality of Bulacan, in the province of Bulacan, to support the creation of a new airport outside of Metro Manila that will decongest and provide an alternative to the existing NAIA airport.
The approved total cost of this project, 735 billion pesos, to be financed by San Miguel Aerosails Inc., the private component. As of July 2023, land development works are ongoing with a total progress of 66%. 98% of the lot of the airport perimeter is already acquired. Also approved by the NEDA board last July 19, 2023 is the unsolicited proposal for the upgrade, expansion, operation, and maintenance of the Laguindingan International Airport, a co-granted project by the Department of Transportation and the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines. The Laguindingan International Airport was completed in 2013 as a replacement for the Lumbia Airport began in Oro. It was financed with Korean official development assistance and was built with a capacity of 1.6 million passengers per annum or 1.6 MPPA. As early as its opening year, the airport's capacity of 1.6 MPPA was already breached, with 1.7 million passengers using the airport in 2018. Passenger throughput in 2014 was 1.6 MPPA, which continuously increased to 1.8 MPPA in 2015 to 2017, 2.1 MPPA in 2018, and peaked at 2.3 MPPA in 2019 before the pandemic. In 2022, 1.7 million passengers already use the airport. Notably, since the airport opened in 2013, no substantial expansion works was undertaken for the airport, leading to peak capacity shortage in 2019 when 2.3 million passengers used the airport, which only had a capacity of 1.6 million passengers. The PPP project will address the capacity shortage at Laguindingan Airport and will ensure sufficient capacity for the duration of the proposed 30-year concession period. The project will involve two capacity augmentation phases. Phase 1 will increase capacity from 1.6 MPPA to 3.9 MPPA and will be undertaken between 2024 to 2026, while Phase 2 will increase capacity from 3.9 MPPA to 6.1 MPPA and is projected to be undertaken between 2029 to 2031. During the concession period, the concessionaire will ensure that the prescribed internationally benchmarked minimum performance standards and specifications or MPSS will be delivered, and failure to do so will subject the concessionaire to penalties for breach of MPSS. With an ICC appraised total project cost of 12.75 billion pesos, this project will reinforce Laguindingan Airport's role as the gateway airport for Northern Mindanao and will contribute to accelerating the region's post-pandemic recovery by promoting economic development and further unlocking the region's tourism potential. As of today, negotiations with the proponent are ongoing. Aside from the recently approved Laguindingan International Airport, several unsolicited airport proposals are ongoing review by the Department of Transportation prior endorsement for investment approval. DOTR is engaging the IFC of the World Bank Group for the project preparation and transaction advisory for the Bohol, Pangnao, and Bicol International Airports, the Bacolod Silay, Davao, Iloilo, Kalibo, Puerto Princesa, and Siargao International Airports. Finally, on this slide, we summarize some of the other aviation and airport PPP projects across different phases in the project life cycle being implemented by the DOTR. Under Phase 1 or under the pre-investment approval, planning, and project development phase, we also have the new Zamboanga Airport, the ATS-ANS project, the Lawag International Airport, and the new Siargao Airport. Options for PPP scheme are being considered and explored for these projects. Under the investment approved pre-construction phase, we have the Sangli International Airport, which is being implemented by the local government of Cavite. This project is a redevelopment of the Sangli Airport and is intended to provide an alternative international gateway to NAIA and the new Manila International Airport in Bulacan. Under investment approved and ongoing construction, it includes the Catiklan Airport, the gateway airport to Boracay. And finally, some of our completed airport PPP projects. include the Clark International Airport, which in 2022 recorded 770,000 passenger traffic, and the Mactan Cebu International Airport, which was completed in 2019, and which recorded 5.6 million passenger traffic in 2022. On February 2023, the Mactan Cebu International Airport was awarded as Asia's best airport among 200 airports in the Asia Pacific under the 5 million passenger category, and in the 2023 Roots Asia Awards in Shanghai, Thailand. This ends my presentation, and as our president has directed the Department of Transportation, we will continue to go full speed ahead in delivering a world-class transportation system for the Philippines. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you, Yusuf PJ Batan. So, how are you guys? Are you still doing good? We apologize for a lot of technical difficulties this afternoon. But on behalf of Stratbase ADR Institute, I would like to thank you all very much for joining us today here at the venue and also those who participated online. We would like to invite you all to join us again next week in our next event. That will be on September 27, Wednesday. The event is titled Implementing a Comprehensive Philippine Maritime Framework to Advance the Rule of Law. We will be talking about how geopolitical developments in the West Philippine Sea have affected the biodiversity and marine environment in the area in light of recently reported extensive damage to coral reefs, as well as how collaboration with strategic partners such as Australia is crucial in developing a comprehensive national maritime policy. Again, this has been Kat Guerrero. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everybody.
Eleanor, have a good installation here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we see you around anyway. Yeah.